Hi. Today I'm going to give you a presentation on energy. 85% of America's energy usage comes from fossil fuels. By the year 2020, it is forecasted we are going to need 100,000 megawatts of new electricity as detailed by the Eco-Imperialism website. The information I'm about to give you is supported by extensive studies conducted by the U.S. Energy Information Administration and the U.S. Department of Energy findings. The waste from fossil fuels is of obvious concern in its environmental footprint, but is still the most profitable and efficient form of energy. From an environmental and an economical standpoint, we would be wise to turn our focus into pulling ourselves out of the recession with fossil fuels and turning our focus into nuclear energy for the future. Today I'd like to give you some information about energy and regarding how fossil fuels are inexpensive and efficient but produce a high content of waste. Wind, solar, and hydroelectric products are inconsistent, expensive, and do not meet the demands of our energy needs, and how nuclear is expensive in the short term through the building of plants, but in the long term is inexpensive and reliable. First, I'd like to talk to you about fossil fuels. Fossil fuels consist of coal, oil, and natural gas, and they currently supply 2/3 of our electricity and nearby transportation needs. America's Power website can detail all the information on our energy sources currently used in America. You currently cannot get any more bang for your buck than you can with fossil fuels. In comparison to alternative energy sources, it is still the leading contender in a cost efficiency ratio. The need to steer away from fossil fuels in the future is due to the large carbon footprint it leaves behind, and also the high death count that fossil fuels comes along with. Next, we have renewable energy sources. The main three renewable energy sources are wind, solar, and hydroelectric power. The problem with all three of these sources is that they are unreliable and inconsistent. They do not meet the demands of the industry's energy needs, and they address new environmental concerns themselves. Solar energy, for example, the panels are both expensive to create and repair when damaged. Solar energy is also limited to very sunny areas and requires a large amount of land for relatively small amounts of energy generation. 1 gigawatt of energy requires 50 square miles of bulldozed land, which creates an environmental concern of its own. The amount of energy generated on a given day depends fully on the amount of sunlight and weather. Wind also is limited to windy and rural areas. It is also highly dependent on the weather, and turbines have posed a problem to injuring birds in the area. 250 square miles of wind farm is needed to generate 1 gigawatt of energy. Finally, we have hydroelectric power for the renewable energy sources. Many are available locations for dams have already been used, so we are reaching our potential limit. Its limited source as it depends on water elevation and rainfall, and it creates a lot of environmental issues with fish, flooding, and dams collapsing. The final source of energy I want to talk about today is nuclear. The fuel is inexpensive, but plants are very expensive to build and take a long time to get all the licensing and requirements. The waste is more compact than any other source, so there's no greenhouse or acid rain effects. Through science, it also can be partially renewable. However, nuclear does run the security risk of nuclear proliferation. I did want to mention, though, that the correlation between nuclear weapons and nuclear power is they both require fissile materials. However, the processes they go through, which materials are used, is slightly different. You can find more information on this on the Nuclear Info website. We also have taken precautions to protect ourselves and to help prevent the development of nuclear weapons through the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, which was developed between countries. The countries are subject to thorough inspection and are regulated by the IAEA. Of the countries that have nuclear weapons, they also had the weapons technology before they had the nuclear power technology, which would go to show us that that's not always a correlation between the two. My proposal for the future is, while in the recession we do not have the funds needed for the initial investment into nuclear power, first we must pull out of the recession. We should turn away from renewable energy as a primary source and turn our money and research into fossil fuels for the present and nuclear for the future. Offshore drilling will create jobs. Producing our own oil reserves will cut the costs for Americans. Once out of the recession, our investments should turn into nuclear power for our primary source. So in conclusion, I am saying that we should provide the most efficient, fiscally, and environmentally responsible future in energy by stop wasting research dollars in inefficient and expensive renewable sources. We should turn our research to more environmentally friendly fossil fuels and go towards a nuclear future. It will help create jobs and cut expenses by offshore drilling and becoming more self-sufficient. Once out of the recession, we can turn fully over to nuclear power as a main resource for energy. So today we have learned how solar, wind, and hydroelectric power are limited, expensive alternatives that don't meet our current or growing energy needs. Fossil fuels are currently the best energy source from a financial and efficiency standpoint, but the worst in their environmental footprint. Nuclear meets the energy requirement, is inexpensive once the plants are built, and is the best for the environment as long as security regulations are maintained as a priority. Now that you know the truth about energy, please push towards a future that will be helpful for everyone. To eventually turn over into a primarily nuclear-powered country, support and workers are needed in legislation, research and engineering, security, construction, and more. Next time you vote, I hope that you will keep all of this in mind. Thank you very much.